I discovered a haunted alien megastructure that slowed time beyond the nebula. I never should have opened that door. I stood there, hand trembling on the cold doorknob, feeling the heavy weight of dread in my chest. It felt wrong, as if the air itself whispered warnings. I was just an ordinary guy, living an ordinary life. The sun was warm, the coffee hot, the laughter of my friends echoing around me. Then I stumbled upon that door. It felt like fate, like curiosity beckoning me closer. When I turned the knob, I was engulfed in darkness. It clung to my skin, a cold sheet of dread wrapping around me. The room beyond was silent, too silent. I could almost hear my heartbeat echoing back at me. A chill ran down my spine, but my curiosity overpowered my instincts. The walls were thick with shadows, twisted and contorted like beings that wanted to reach out and grab me. My senses heightened. I could smell something metallic, like rust mixed in with stale air. It was as if the room had forgotten the taste of light. I took a step inside, and the door creaked shut behind me with a finality that made my breath hitch. Strange noises filled the void. Was that a whisper? Or just my imagination playing tricks? Objects shifted in the dimness, and I jumped at the sight of something, a flicker of movement just outside my vision. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to shake off the panic swelling in me. Then it happened again, a soft scraping sound, like nails against the floor. Fear coiled tightly around my throat. Something was in here with me. My heart raced as I pivoted, scanning the corners, the shadows, desperate for proof of my own sanity. Then I saw it. A figure, barely visible, hovering at the edge of the darkness. Those eyes, they gleamed like stars, cold and piercing. I couldn't breathe. It felt like time had slowed. I wanted to scream, yell, run away, but my feet were frozen to the ground. And then it smiled. That sharp grin split its face, and I felt the very essence of terror grip my heart. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The sharpness of its grin sent chills cascading down my spine. The figure was ethereal, a silhouette rippling with shadows, as if it were a fragment torn from the very fabric of darkness itself. Those star-like eyes bore into me, deep and endless, holding a promise of nightmares just beyond comprehension. I fought to breathe, my lungs constricting as the reality of my situation crashed down like a black wave. It took a cautious step towards me, and I felt the air thicken, heavy with dread. The scraping noise echoed again, more distinct now, like fingernails tracing the outline of sanity in the desolation. Panic clawed at my throat, but my body betrayed me, unable to retreat from an unknown horror that was keenly aware of my fear. "Why did you come here?" a voice echoed, not from the figure's lips, but from the very walls that encased this malevolence. It vibrated through me, a dissonance that rattled my bones and made every hair stand on edge. The voice was low and guttural, layered with a cacophony of whispers, as if a multitude of souls were trapped within it. "I was just curious," I stammered, each word feeling like a lie, a feeble justification in the face of profound terror. The figure continued its advance, gliding ethereally, never truly moving as much as flowing towards me, the shadows around it swirling like a black mist. With every inch it closed, I felt the raw panic increase, manifesting as a new sensation, a bitter taste in my mouth, like copper. "You shouldn't have opened the door," it growled, a cruel edge lining its voice. "You are not meant to be here." The room began to shift around me, the dimensions bending and warping as if reality itself was struggling to keep its shape. The shadows became denser, darker, creeping towards me like hungry tendrils determined to snatch me into their eternal night. I turned to run, but the walls seemed to close in, the door impossibly far away. Suddenly, the air cracked like glass, and the whispers intensified, overwhelming my senses. They were a cacophony of voices, each one begging, pleading, and screaming. "Help us! It feeds on us! Don't let it take you!" The chilling sound of laughter erupted, a high, tinkling mirth that twisted at my very essence. I slammed my eyes shut, forcing myself to focus, to remember anything that might save me. But then, moments of my life began to flash before me, each memory unraveling with a vivid clarity I had never thought possible. Every embarrassment, every regret, every moment of grief. They swirled around me like a storm, and in their chaos, I caught a glimpse of faces I had lost, their expressions contorted in agony and fear. And then it spoke again, the voice slithering through my mind, "You will join us soon." The nightmare lurched forward, and I felt its cold breath, a nightmarish wind that carried the stench of decay and the echoes of lost souls. I stumbled backward, adrenaline flooding my veins, bracing myself for an impact that never came. Instead, the figure halted, its gaze intensifying, as if it was seeing straight through me. An unholy light flickered in its eyes, and I noticed the space around us swirling violently, a distortion of reality itself. In a moment, the ground trembled beneath me, rending open like dark jaws. I caught a glimpse of a churning abyss filled with silvery, writhing forms, faces of the damned flickering in and out of sight. A spasm of fear coursed through me. Before I had time to think, the ephemeral figure darted forward, lunging towards me with an impossible speed. My heart thudded violently as I realized I had no escape. I was trapped not just in this room, but in the jaws of something ancient, something that claimed to protect its secrets by dragging unwitting souls into oblivion. My foot slipped, and I felt myself begin to fall, the churning void below beckoning me into its depths. I reached out futilely, grasping for anything to hold onto, but the shadows closed in, and the horrifying realization dawned I was slipping away, just like all the others. A ripping sound echoed as the abyss swallowed me whole, and in the final moments before the darkness consumed me, I could hear its voice close, whispering, inviting, an echo of despair as the last vestiges of light faded away. "Join us," and then everything went black. Silence enveloped me like a thick fog, oppressive and suffocating. I floated in an infinite void where sound was swallowed whole, a chilling contrast to the tumult of chaotic echoes that had filled my ears moments before. There was no up or down, no sense of direction, just an abyss stretching on forever, the darkness pulsing with a rhythmic heartbeat that felt intimately familiar, almost comforting in its persistence. As I remained suspended in this emptiness, a flood of sensations roared back, each more vivid than the last visions of a vibrant life suddenly juxtaposed against the gray shadows threatening to consume me. The ghostly faces danced just out of reach, their whispers now near inaudible, mere sighs that brushed against my senses. "Find us, help us, you're not alone." My limbs began to tingle, weightless and strange. Then a sudden pull jerked me forward, drawing my attention to a shifting light in the distance. It flickered, waning and brightening, like a distant star fighting against the oppressive black. I began to drift toward it, not of my own volition, but propelled by an unseen force, a magnetic compulsion anchored in my very soul. As I neared, the light morphed into a swirling vortex, a kaleidoscope of colors, vivid and surreal. It beckoned with whispers, a cacophony of lost promises. Come closer." The pull intensified, dragging me deeper. Just before I succumbed to its allure, I glimpsed something more alarming. Shadows merging and separating, revealing nightmarish visages, twisted faces frozen in eternal horror, mouths open in silent screams. With a desperate push against the suffocating pull, I wrenched my gaze away from the vortex and focused on the soft whispers still threading through the air. Faces emerged again, each slowly coming into focus. The nameless souls from before lost, bound to this stifling darkness, like weights at the bottom of a lifeless sea. "Do you hear them?" one voice implored, sorrow lacing its tone. "What is this place?" I gasped, fear twisting my insides. "This is the Chamber of Echoes," another replied, her voice a fragile thread in the void. "Time does not exist here. It feeds on us, growing fatter with each soul it devours. And the more it feeds, the louder we become." An anguished scream erupted from one of the faces, resonating through the void, but the others hushed the chaos. "You must go back," the first voice urged. "You must close the door you opened. If you don't, the shadow that hunts will consume you too." As their words sunk in, the darkest corner of the void shifted again, a distortion swirling closer, carving through the silence. The oppressive weight of despair thickened around me, and the shadows squeezed tighter, lapping at the edges of my consciousness. I could feel it, the figure from before, its intent raw and insatiable, clawing its way to me once more. "No!" I shouted, straining against the psychic chains seeking to bind me. My resolve surged, desperation igniting. "I won't let it take me. Fight it!" A chorus of voices urged, weaving together in a desperate harmony that filled the void with purpose. "Fight until you wake with every ounce of strength I possessed." I turned my will against the pulling grasp of the encroaching darkness. I pushed away from the souls surrounding me, their piercing gazes melding into a single, unified plea. They glimmered with a strange light, the soft echoes transforming into a shield, defending me from what lay ahead. The figure lunged, its mouth twisted in that dreadful grin, teeth glinting as it breached whatever barrier the luminous souls provided. I felt my heart racing, a frantic drumbeat resonating against the void. With one last defiance, I flung my mind toward the vortex, aiming for that gateway, the light that promised escape. In an instant, the darkness roared, surging forward as the shadows morphed into claws, ripping through the chorus of echoed voices, consuming them like breath snatched away. I felt their presence slip, writhing away to an overwhelming despair, a realization that sent me spiraling. I was forced into the vortex, pulled against my will, tumbling back to a reality I had fought to escape. My surroundings shattered like glass, and the echoing screams of the damned chased me, wrapping around me like a shroud, their haunting melodies echoing in my ears. As I fell through the swirling colors, I caught a glimpse of a figure emerging behind me, its eyes a ferocious light, those terrible, endless orbs filled with hunger. And with one final push, I surged through the threshold, colliding with a blinding light. I gasped, breaking the surface of the darkness like a drowning swimmer clawing for air, snapping to consciousness in an unfamiliar landscape. Reality rushed back sharply, but as my heart settled into place, my gaze fixed on the horizon. A presence loomed in the distance, an alien structure etched against the sky, sharp lines and angles reminding me disturbingly of the beginnings of my hellish journey. And then I saw it, a dark shape looming within, a silhouette watching me. "You shouldn't have opened the door," it whispered from the depths of the shadows, its figure shifting further into clarity. The eyes, so deeply familiar, gleamed back at me with malevolence. I barely had time to fathom the horror when the ground beneath me trembled, splitting open once more, and with a gut-wrenching roar, that promise of sealed doom surged forth like a tide. "Join us." The ground beneath me split open with a sound like thunder, as if the very fabric of reality was screaming. Panic surged, tightening my throat as I stumbled backward, desperately trying to gain my footing on the tremoring earth. But it was no use. The ground heaved and bucked, like a beast writhing in its death throes. I could barely comprehend the sight before me, a chasm widening, exhaling a cloud of darkness that faintly glimmered with 1,000 pinpricks of light, like starry fragments unwilling to dissolve into the void. I turned to escape, to run from the sinister silhouette that still lurked behind the treacherous threshold of the chasm, but just as the last remnants of the beckoning abyss dissipated, a guttural growl erupted from its depths. The sound reverberated through the air, sending chills racing down my spine. Each breath I took felt heavy with dread, weighed down by the knowledge that I was trapped, caught between worlds teetering on the verge of collapse. Clutching my head, I stumbled forward and peered into the yawning darkness, trying to pierce its ominous veil. Was it another portal? Or was it some abominable prison for the cursed souls? Flickers of movement danced at the periphery of my vision, and I strained to catch glimpses of what lay within. Help! A voice hung in the air, thin and desperate, cutting through the oppressive silence. It was just above a whisper, wavering like a fragile thread about to snap. My heart seized. I felt that familiar sense of longing to help, yet horrified by the darkness from which it sighed. Before I could decide, a wave of shadows poured forth, hurtling towards me. They twisted into forms of anguished faces, the same lost souls I had encountered in the void. Their mouths gaped wide, erupting into a cacophony of cries. "Find us! Save us! No!" I shouted, instinctively moving to shield my face as the darkness engulfed me, engulfing everything in its vicinity. The cries merged with a symphony of despair, the very air laden with their mourning. Each scream burrowed into my mind, forcing memories I had tried to suppress, the faces of those I had lost, the failures that haunted me. And then, just as suddenly as they had come, the shadows dissipated, retreating into the chasm, leaving me gasping for breath and blinking against reality that suddenly felt unbearably thin. The silhouette remained, pulsating with a sinister glow. "Why do you resist?" it hissed, its voice a cruel caress that slithered through the air, wrapping around my heart like a constrictor. "You can join them. You can become one with the forgotten." "No!" I cried, shaking my head vigorously. "I want to be your puppet." With each defiant shout, the entity morphed, a fanged grin stretching wider across its distorted features. The familiar eyes flickered with recognition, exposing depths of darkness that felt both foreign and achingly familiar. In an instant, I realized it bore the countenance of someone long lost to me, an echo of my past, none other than my own reflection twisted into grotesque familiarity. The ground trembled anew, and the chasm roared, the pull of its depths gnawing at my ankles as tendrils of shadow slithered upwards, seeking to bind me. "It's too late," the creature taunted, its voice mingling with the wind, an unholy chorus that raised goosebumps along my arms. "They hunger for you, and soon you shall join the abyss." Panic drove me. I will not be swallowed by shadows, will not succumb to its taunting grip. With a deep breath, I reached for the one thing that held any power, my memories tied to those lost souls. A flicker of light ignited within me, a spark of hope kindled through all the grief. I could feel their pain, every echo resonated in my bones. "Together," I shouted, thrusting my mind outward, summoning the essence of the lost around me. "Let us become whole. Let us fight." As the power surged through me, a blinding light erupted, challenging the darkness, illuminating the path ahead. The twisted figure halted, its expression shifting to a mixture of rage and despair. Before it could retreat, I charged forward, intent on shattering the veil that separated us from both the darkness and the horrific truth lurking beneath. "No!" The scream of the form froze the nearest shadows, and for one harrowing moment, I felt the impact of 1,000 souls pressing against me, their anguish melding into my strength. But as the light pressed onward, I glimpsed something else, an even darker truth hovering just below the horizon, another shadow, far more ancient and powerful, rumbling to wake. "Join us or be consumed," the whisper returned, now resonating from all sides, suffocating as it engulfed everything, the walls of reality aching, tremors growing in frequency, threatening to consume not just me, but what it meant to be real. And with that haunting promise crystallizing in my heart, I realized my next challenge would not only be a struggle against succumbing to the shadows, but an even greater terror yet to come, a terror with a form far too familiar, but deeply distorted and utterly relentless. The ground quaked wildly beneath, and suddenly shadows began pouring from the chasm with an unrelenting force, swarming toward me as my own reflection shifted into a howling mass. But just as I braced for impact, a voice exploded from the surge. "Remember us!" My next heartbeat echoed in a deafening silence, for I was left standing in the face of all my choices unraveling, grasping for hope, as the final threads of reality hung precariously by a thin strand. With dread anchoring my soul, I too could hear the echo, "Join us!" The relentless shadows converged upon me, twisting and writhing like sentient serpents, a menagerie of lost souls wailing in unison. I felt their grief wrap around me, constricting my heart with an icy grip. "Remember us!" their chorus echoed, crashing against my senses like waves in a storm. I staggered back, but there was nowhere to run, only the yawning chasm behind me and an ever-growing darkness before me. "Please," I muttered, desperate laced within my trembling voice. I had barely grasped the enormity of that identity, of my reflection's monstrous visage looming closer, yet I felt the pulse of helplessness vibrate through my bones, a blade nested in fear, ready to strike. I needed to choose. I had to choose. Suddenly, the shadows shifted, splitting like water to expose a glimmering pathway, a bone-white bridge wrapped in ethereal light housing the images of those whose faces were now lost to time. They beckoned, their hands outstretched, their eyes glistening with tears suspended in a void of longing, agony mingling with hope. "Trust us," they whispered, and my breath quickened with the weight of that singular word, as though they stood on the precipice of revealing a secret too horrific to be grasped. I hesitated. What lay beyond that bridge? Some sanctuary? Or a darker prison? With trembling resolve, I shuffled forward, adrenaline pounding in rhythm with the rising beat of despair. The shadows hissed, retreating for the briefest moment as the light intensified, wrapping around me like a protective cloak. But as I crossed the threshold, an anguished cry pierced my thoughts, causing the world around me to spiral into chaos. "Fool!" roared the creature that had once reflected my own face, now warped into a nightmare. The shadows turned violent, snapping back like whips, as the last remnants of light flickered and died. I stood on the bridge, realizing with horror that it was crumbling beneath me. Each step echoed with the hiss of collapsing despair. Instinct told me to run, but the whispers gripped my feet like lead, anchoring me to that wretched bridge. "Save us," they implored, and for a moment, the souls gathered close, enveloping me in a cocoon of warmth. "It's the only way." Suddenly, the ground beneath the bridge shifted violently, the entire structure quaking as if caught in the throes of a nightmare. I looked back, heart racing against the encroaching tendrils of darkness that surged forward, desperate to reclaim their own. The air thickened, twisting into a dense fog of hopelessness that wrapped around my throat, willing me to relent. I was not just a pawn, but a key. I could feel the weight of their collective anguish urging me, pressing like iron upon my chest. It settled heavily in my gut, the truth coiling around the very essence of my being. What curse had I been entangled in? "Join us!" the voices grew louder, a maddening chant that felt more like a threat than a plea. They became relentless shadows of my past, morphing into grotesque shapes that were undeniable reflections of my own failures. My sister, the one who had vanished into the ether of despair, her eyes now black voids, her smile twisted in mockery. My mentor, once a sage of wisdom, now a skeletal figure howling in madness. The bridge trembled again, as if it could sense my conflict, but my resolve clung fiercely. "No!" I cried, channeling every ounce of strength I had left. "I want to become what you are." Yet the shadows surged forth, coiling around me as my foot slipped on the disintegrating bridge. I was teetering on the edge of oblivion, caught between the weight of the soul's yearning for salvation and the gnawing darkness that sought to pull me into an eternal night. As I lost my balance, I grasped at the edge, the pulsing energy of the bridge humming beneath my fingertips. It morphed, revealing images of the lives once full of light yet now steeped in shadow. I felt the vibrations, voices whispering secrets of a hidden truth about time's betrayal, looming horrors beyond comprehension. The cries of my lost friends rang out, washing over me in waves like a tide of despair. And then, in that moment of horror and clarity, I glimpsed the truth. There was a fabric, a scene within the fabric torn and frayed. I had the power not only to save them, but unwittingly to strike a pact with the darkness itself. The shadows tore themselves loose from the chasm's pit, manifesting into figures that bore my face, but were infinitely wretched, a gallery of my failures and sorrows, fully realizing their monstrous forms. They roared in unison, "Become one with us." I screamed as I felt the bridge's last thread break, a rumbling floor dropping into nothingness. A vast whirlpool of darkness opened beneath me, swirling and dancing like a vortex of dread, aching to pull me into its depths, where the last memory of reality hung by a thread of hope, wavering. But I was too ready to let go. With every ounce of will left, I stretched my hands toward the light beyond the shadows, knowing my decision to embrace what I feared most would be the one thing that could change my fate. "Do not forget me," I whispered, my heart racing. And then it came, an unrelenting surge of energy radiating from both realms, pulsating with the knowledge of ages past, just as the darkest shadow of my own heart lunged for me. "I have left behind no one," I cried, surrendering myself to the storm of my fate, "and I will uncover the truth, no matter the cost." As the darkness consumed me, a harrowing silence cloaked the void, and in that second of eternal despair, a blinding light erupted from the depths of the chasm. I was surrounded by the echoes of all that I had lost, and as the blinding brightness surged, I knew I had taken a step into the catastrophic unknown, and then I fell into the abyss, to a fate unwritten, and there, darkness awaited, spread wide as a mouth eager to consume its next victim. The chill gripped me as I plummeted into an abyss that defied description, a void devoid of light, but pulsating with a sinister energy. Each second felt like an eternity. A smear of time stretched thin, as if the fabric of reality groaned under the weight of what awaited below. Whispers curled around my psyche like smoke, vague yet hauntingly familiar. The echoes of my past, now twisted and grotesque, gnawed at the edges of my consciousness. As I fell, the shadows, once dancing around the edges of sanity, now morphed into something else entirely. Tendrils reached out, thick as rope, wrapping around my limbs with cold precision. They pulled me deeper, their grip insatiable and constricting, suffocating the last whispers of hope. I screamed, the sound devoured by the silence that enveloped me. Abruptly, the fall ceased. I was swallowed by a lightless chamber, the air thick with despair as it crept under my skin. I crouched on a narrow ledge, the ground beneath me slick and pulsing as if it were alive. A low, mournful wail resonated around me, a sound not of despair, but anticipation. The ground vibrated, each thrum sending waves of anguish that felt as though they pervaded every atom of my being. And then I saw it, a massive structure looming in the depths of the dark. It was not matter as I understood it. It was woven from the very essence of fear and longing, a grotesque latticework of forms that shimmered and twisted in the gloom. Its surface shimmered with the reflective agony of countless souls trapped within, an alien megastructure that breathed as if it bore witness to eternity. My heart raced, pulling me to the edge of that ledge. Against the darkness, I could see fleeting silhouettes, figures that flickered in and out of existence, their faces piercing and vaguely familiar. Was that the face of my sister, her laugh reduced to a whisper of agony? What grotesque spectacle was before me? This was not just a structure. It was a monument to horror, a galaxy of lost lives held captive by time's cruel hand, moving toward the monolith. I felt time itself bend, twisting like the fabric of a dream. It slowed around my every movement, the shadows swirling faster, gnashing in frustration as if they could not comprehend my defiance. With each step, I was acutely aware of the weight of their expectations pressing against my chest, a raw, primal urge to succumb to them. Whispers beckoned from the structure, growing louder as I approached. "Come closer, find us," their voices intertwined with the hum of the structure, inviting me to uncover their secrets, to unlock the nexus of despair where so many had once stood before me. A way to grip the darkness, to control it, yet could such a thing even exist amidst the ruins of tragedy? Courage mingled with fear, propelling me closer. I reached out, brushing against the eerie surface. The moment my fingers connected, a surge of energy flooded through my arm, a flood of memories, of unspeakable horrors pooling within me like shadows in water. I gasped as images cascaded through my mind, unbidden faces of those I had tried to save, their eyes wide and filled with blame. My failures exploded in a cacophony of agony intertwined with chilling laughter that echoed from beyond time. Suddenly, a piercing scream tore through the gloom as a figure materialized before me, a soul twisted by betrayal, eyes hollow and pleading. It was no longer just a memory. It was a nightmare given flesh, screaming for release. "You brought us here," it shrieked, its voice grating against the very fabric of reality. "You must replenish what you have stolen." The realization struck me like ice. A transaction had occurred without my consent. I stood not as a savior, but as a vessel to feed the raging hunger weaving through the essence of the megastructure, and the shadows swarmed closer, eager to drag me deeper into their fold. "No!" I cried, clawing back against the tide of madness as the figures leered. "I want to be part of this." But their shrieks filled the air, blending into a cacophony that threatened to turn my mind to ashes. The shadows coiled tighter, and the chamber began to quake, as if angered by my defiance. The whispers surged into a frenzied chorus, drowning out reason. Suddenly, the structure convulsed, the surrounding darkness coalescing into a menacing shape, a creature born of shadow and regret, its single glowing eye locking onto mine. "I will claim you, just as you claimed the others," it rumbled low, an echo deep within my soul. Frozen in terror, I could feel the abyss opening beneath me once more. I staggered back, the ledge crumbling at my feet, pieces splintering away into the depths below. Desperately, I clung to the structure, knowing that an answer lay within, but the question echoed in my mind as the ground beneath crumbled and shadows surged forth. What was the cost of truth in a realm that thrived on pain? As the maw of darkness opened wider, ready to swallow me whole, I hurled my body toward the structure, grasping for the flickering essence of hope, even as despair clawed at my heart. "Help me!" I screamed into the void, knowing I may have sealed my fate in exploring the terrible depths of this haunted monstrosity, hoping against hope I could uncover the secrets that could save or destroy everything I once knew. But the entity within began to laugh, a sound echoing around me as I plunged forward, the shadows closing in, an impending dread promising that this was only the beginning of something unfathomably worse. The instant my fingers made contact with the surface of the grotesque structure, a wave of revelatory pain jolted through me like white-hot fire. It was not merely sensation. It was a resurrection of every sorrow I had ever carried, and the ghosts of my past surged within, demanding to be acknowledged. Flashes overwhelmed my vision, agonized faces twisted in torment, the screams of those I had failed rising like tortured echoes in a cavern of despair. With each beat of my heart, it became harder to distinguish between my own memories and the encapsulated suffering that pulsed around me. My sister's face, framed in shadows, morphed into countless others, each one clawing for recognition, to be freed from this eternal prison forged of grief. "You don't belong here," I whispered, half to them and half to myself, as I leaned against the alien structure, my heartbeat synchronizing with its unholy rhythm. But then a deeper realization ignited within me, a chain of unspeakable horrors encircling my mind. I wasn't merely an intruder. I had become a vessel, a conduit through which despair surged unrelentingly. My presence fed the dark entity's hunger for despair. "More!" it roared, the booming timbre echoing like thunder, drowning out agency and thought. The entity's eye widened, brimming with malignant anticipation. The more you resist, the more they suffer, and so will you. I recoiled, pulling away from the structure, but my limbs felt heavy, ensnared by shadows that whispered insidiously in my ears secret promises of relief lying just beyond the veil, urging me to succumb to the darkness. The amalgamation of lost cycle around me, lives squandered, promises broken, hands held and let go. Desperate to regain control, I turned towards one of the flickering figures floating just beyond my reach. It was undeniably my sister, her features twisted in confusion and desperation, reaching for me. "Help us! Help me!" she cried, her voice cracking, fraying at the edges, becoming something painfully alien. "Please, I'll save you." Tears streamed down my face as I beseeched the structure, pleading for a way to reclaim the lives lost among its depths. I had to disentangle my existence from the darkness or succumb, as so many before had. Yet my resolve faltered, dulled beneath the weight of incessant whispers. They beckoned, insidiously promising knowledge power over the structure if only I surrendered my will. I could become a master of the shadows, wielding the essence of despair like a weapon. Could I protect those I loved from suffering forevermore? But before I could grapple with this revelation, the laughter of the entity crescendoed, dissonant and unending, vibrating the very air around me. "Do you think you can rewrite what has long been inscribed?" The shadows thrashed around me, drawing closer, relentless in their pursuit, a horde out for blood and vengeance. Without warning, the ground quaked violently, sending tendrils of darkness slicing through the air. The very essence of the structure writhed, an angry chasm opening beneath me. "Time is a cruel cage, and you will find only decay within," the creature warned, its single eye blazing with an insatiable hunger. The ledge I had clung to shattered beneath my weight, splintering like glass, sending me tumbling into a gaping maw of shadows. I gasped, flailing as everything around me fell away, the waves of despair crashing against me like a storm. "Help! I need help!" I screamed, feeling my own voice fractured by the suffocating void. There was no ground beneath me, no anchor in the dark. Figures surged and swirled like tempestuous flames, grasping for fragments of me as I fell further into the abyss, each face a mirror of my own fears and failures. Even as I plunged, a singular thought fought to bloom in the chaos, the idea of making a choice, a sacrifice to extract myself from this fate. Could I surrender a piece of myself, a memory perhaps, to wade through the unfurling terror? Each soul trapped here was a part of me, and even as they screamed, they became the weight that anchored me to this dark reality. Then, in that moment of terror, clarity struck. If I had to barter with this grotesque entity for survival, what or whom would I be willing to lose? What was it worth to remain whole in a fractured realm? As the darkness surged around me, the hunters of despair closing in like wolves scenting blood, I made my choice. I would descend deeper to confront the ineffable horror that lay at the heart of this ominous place, an unthinkable sacrifice, an act of bloody desperation. The moment crystallized. It was all or nothing. And just as the void threatened to consume my final breath, a whisper sliced through the cacophony, an unmistakably familiar voice calling my name, entwined with the wicked embrace of shadow. "Find me, I'm so close." In the suffocating dark, where every crevice echoed chaos, I could not ignore the pull of that voice, the deep ache of a familiar bond that may very well lead me to my own undoing. Had I truly escaped my fate, or was it merely reshaping before my disbelieving heart? As time lost meaning and shadows encroached, I knew one thing. The true horror would reveal itself once the choice had been made. And in the consuming dark, I let myself fall forward toward that terrifying promise of reunion, ready to face whatever lay below. The darkness swallowed me whole, wrapping itself around my limbs like sticky tendrils, smothering breath and sanity in its choking embrace. I plummeted not just through space, but through the very fabric of what it meant to exist. No longer did the layers of reality exert their influence. I was adrift in an infinite night where thoughts devolved into echoes, and the past coiled tightly around me like a serpent ready to strike. Every pulse of my heart reverberated within the void, each beat amplifying the pain woven into the blackness around me. I clung to that voice, the one that ebbed and flowed in tandem with my fall, reverberating with an urgency that sent prickles of despair coursing through my being. Find me, I am so close it felt like a beacon, the glimmering light in a chasm of shadows. But as I spiraled further, a horrifying realization washed over me. What if the voice I chased was a curse rather than salvation? For every whisper echoed a reflection of my guilt, a misty landscape of memories threaded with betrayal. I began to doubt the familiar lilt. "Sister?" I gasped, the word clawing its way out, soaked in trepidation. The shadows writhed in response, not with kindness, but as a snaking darkness that guarded the truth fiercely. Suddenly, the plummeting sensation ceased, and I found myself suspended in a purgatorial void, the shadows swirling with intent. Visions flared into existence, each one drenched in emotion. Her face materialized before me, not as I remembered but warped and drawn taut in agony. "Help! You must help!" The voices of others surged like tidal waves, pressing in from all sides. People I had lost, weaving stories of pain and longing, as if their very souls clamored for rescue. The shadows thickened, coiling tighter around me, feeding off my fear. I could see them now, figures emerging from the dark, their faces unsettlingly familiar, each an echo of someone I had sacrificed to my own desires. I felt their eyes bore into me, accusatory and spiteful. "You abandoned us," a voice shrieked. "You were supposed to save us." The familiar hollow ached into my chest, shame creeping up my spine like icy fingers. I battled against the verbal onslaught, but the shadows pressed me backwards, demanding I relive each moment of betrayal like a ghoulish replay. "You think you're a savior?" another hissed, and suddenly I was back in my childhood home. The cheerful laughter evolved into a cacophony of horrors as the familiar surroundings warped into an eerie distortion of reality. "Help us!" A chorus of voices filled the air, twisting my heart. The anguish mingled with that haunting familiarity, resonating deeply until it became unbearably suffocating. "Save us, please!" With a desperate sob, I reached for the source of the voice I thought was my sister S, but my fingers met only the cold, clammy surface of darkness that felt alive beneath my touch. No! I was losing her. My hands trembled as I demanded, "Show me the truth." The words erupted from my mouth, laden with desperation, and as I uttered them, the shadows twisted and writhed, shaping a wretched figure before me. My heart stopped. There, entwined within the mass of darkness, was a grotesque imitation of my sister. Eyes wide and glistening, but void of the warmth I remembered, they gazed at me with a manic hunger. "You found me! You're just in time!" she screeched, her voice grating, morphing into something dark, something utterly non-human. "Help! I need help!" I shouted again, instinctively recoiling from the twisted face, the vision deteriorating into screams and laughter that bounced against the far reaches of this nightmarish void. But it was too late. The familiarity of that unsettling grin set my mind racing, spiraling back to memories I could hardly bear. With newfound resolve, I pushed the fear aside. I refused to remain a prisoner of this darkness. "If you want my sister, you'll have to take me," I cried out, forcing courage through trembling lips. The shadows laughed, a cacophony of sinister mirth that seeped into my bones. They danced feverishly around me, thrusting me deeper into their relentless abyss. "Is that what you think?" A voice slithered, echoing with a derisive tone. Suddenly, the figures in the dark shifted as if compelled by an unseen force, their faces morphing once more, twisting into familiar shapes once more, a parade of the lost. "She is already ours." My breath quickened, panic rising like bile in my throat. "No! I'll save you!" I screamed, though the words felt feeble against the tide of despair closing in like jaws ready to snap. The shadows closed in further, an overwhelming force constricting around me, biting deeper into my skin, melding the past and present into a grotesque tapestry of horror. As I prepared to give myself fully to the darkness in a final, desperate gambit, the bonds of reality twisted and fractured. I felt myself being pulled apart, memories fragmenting into shards that glinted with fear and guilt, the weight of countless lives resting upon my shoulders. Then from the depths of the black, piercing through the cacophony like a shard on glass, I heard it once more. That voice, find me, it resonated with a fervor I could not ignore, trembling through the chaos, beckoning me toward the most concealed truth. But would I regret it if I followed that call? Right before the darkness extinguished what little hope remained, a blinding light sliced through, illuminating the shadows a distant sanctuary, a path leading to untold revelations. The shadows hissed in fury as I veered toward that ethereal glow, my heart pounding in anticipation, dread bubbling beneath the surface. And as I stepped into the light, a voice rippled through my consciousness, "Why would you leave me?" The very ground beneath me trembled as the entity roared, its rage a living presence threatening to engulf me. In that moment, I was faced with a dreadful choice: confront the darkness that wanted to claim me, or plunge into the horrors of salvation, unsure of what awaited on the other side. With every ounce of my being, I lunged towards the light, prepared to unveil whatever horrors lay hidden there, and plunge headfirst into a fate I could scarcely comprehend. The moment I crossed the threshold into the light, my senses erupted in violent clarity. Time stretched unnaturally, crystallizing fragments of memory into vivid scenes. Each one seemed like a forgotten relic, pieced together in a grotesque manner. I stumbled forward, looking around in disbelief as the luminous glow morphed into an overwhelming kaleidoscope of colors, illuminating an endless cavern filled with architectural marvels that seemed to rise from the very bones of the earth itself. Yet there was something fundamentally wrong about it all. The beauty held a sickening undercurrent, a profound unease that crawled beneath my skin. The light flickered, momentarily revealing gauzy apparitions drifting through the structure, their features fleeting yet unmistakably familiar. My sister, friends, lost spirits I had never known but recognized from rumors and whispers. They moved with a mechanical grace, eyes glazed and hollow, swirling around the arched ceilings covered in indecipherable glyphs that pulsed eerily in rhythm with my heartbeat. "Am I dead?" I gasped, breathless and frantic. The astral shadows from the darkness I had fled loomed ominously beyond the entrance, casting long, claw-like fingers that desperately reached inward, hungry for my essence. A cry began to rise in my throat, but the moment was snatched from me as a figure emerged from the depths of the shimmering chaos. The entity, cloaked in a blue nebula of light, drifted toward me. Its features twisted subtly, resembling those I had lost, and yet they bore an alien grace, eyes probing with an unsettling intelligence that hinted at unspeakable knowledge. "Welcome, seeker," it said, its voice resonating within the very marrow of my bones. "This is the nexus of sorrow and salvation. You stand at the precipice of decision. Where is my sister?" I croaked, panic threading its way through my chest. "What have you done to her?" The alien entity smiled, but the gesture was devoid of warmth. "Do you seek to uncover what the darkness kept hidden? Or do you remain blinded by your past?" "No. I refuse to let her fade away." My voice cracked, desperation fueling my determination. "Bring her back." Just then, the cavern shuddered violently, the structures flickering as shadows began to curl ominously around their pristine outlines. The apparitions paused, their glassy eyes darting toward me, mouths moving in silent screams. Whispers, frantic and incoherent, surged through the air, and I felt a strange compulsion to listen. My consciousness stretched toward their haunting calls, their desperate need for recognition, igniting a fire of guilt that washed over me those I had deserted in my quest for freedom. "Does it haunt you?" The lives you left behind? The alien's voice unfurled like a serpent, curling and weaving around the threads of my thoughts. Every choice has its price, you know. Would you pay it? Stop. Just show me. I screamed, feeling the weight of those lost souls pressing against me like an avalanche, threatening to bury me under their sorrow. And then, with a sudden surge of kinetic energy, the cavern burst open, revealing a hollow well of swirling darkness. Eyes wide, I peered into the oblivion, where I saw her, my sister, suspended in a sea of shadow, shrouded in despair. She reached for me, mouthing my name as her features morphed through anguish and hope, twisting into a specter graced by fear. Help! Her voice echoed, fractured and distorted, claws of shadow dragging at her limbs, gnashing teeth unseen lurking behind the veil. The entity floated closer, its gaze fixed on my face, gauging my resolve. To save her, Seeker, you must confront the despair contained within the heart of darkness. Embrace your regrets. Only then can the fractured souls rest. Those words struck me like lightning, sending ripples of hopelessness surging through my veins. I glanced once more at my sister, who fell deeper into shadowed, grasping arms. No! I shouted, but dragging strength of the abyss weighed heavy on my limbs. Will you confess? The entity's voice resonated, enveloping me as it drew nearer. The burden of choice is a terrible one. You cannot escape it. With my heart pounding in my chest, I wrestled against despair, memories flooding me, the faces I had carved from my existence, the choices I made to achieve my freedom, all pulling me under like quicksand. I staggered, torn between realms, knowing that saving my sister meant confronting the very demons I had concealed. As the cavern began to close around me, echoes of past choices danced cruelly through my mind, the opportunities one had snuffed in pursuit of safety. Yes, I'm guilty, I yelled, tears streaming down my cheeks, crumbling under the weight of what I had abandoned. I left you. I abandoned them. At that moment, the darkness surged, swallowing my voice, but it didn't matter. Something deep within me ignited. The truth was more relentless than the horror chasing me. The shadows roared in response, vibrationally clashing against the alien architecture as it swayed like the heartbeat of a living thing. Let go! The alien being screamed in a tempest of light and sorrow, and in its fury, the well of darkness exploded outward, tendrils reaching for me with unrelenting ferocity. I fell to my knees, choking against a spiral of memories, choking against guilt, but amid the pain, I felt a shift. The shadows paused, resisting the gravitational pull of the darkness surrounding them. I could see my sister's face more clearly now, shimmering in the depths. Help! Her voice faded in a resonant echo, fractured by regret, but something else pulled me toward her, a sliver of strength intertwined with absolution. With trembling hands, I thrust myself into the well. The light consumed me, the truths unfurling around as I screamed her name, ready to face a darkness that would unravel not just my sister's fate, but the very essence of who I was. And then, as the shadows retaliated and the weight of countless tormented souls pressed upon me, a laugh rang out, a guttural, spine-chilling sound that reverberated off the very depths of my being. You really think you can save her, Seeker? I was entrapped, suspended between the flickers of light and the sneering shade, an inevitable clash between hope and horror locked in a mind-bending battle, revealing that the abyss was not just a conduit of despair, but a cruel mirror to my own fractured soul. And in that moment, I wasn't sure which side would consume me first. I had thought that stepping into the light was my salvation, my chance at rescue. But as I drifted deeper into the abyss framed by beams of light, and shadows weaving around the architectural marvel that encased my lost sister, everything began to unravel. The alien structure seemed to pulse in response to my growing dread, its surfaces reflecting not just light, but the fragmented truths of those forever locked within its bondage, including my own. Help me! My sister's voice rang out, an echo from the depths of despair that echoed deep within the abyss. The tendrils of darkness constricted around my limbs, as if trying to stifle any attempt at resistance. She was still there, ensnared in an endless loop of suffering, and the sight of her twisted features sent a new wave of anguish crashing over me. But now, the darkness tugged at my consciousness, its whispers a twisted symphony beckoning me to surrender, to accept the curse I'd unwittingly invited. "Why do you fight?" hissed the shadows, slithering closer, folding over each other like a tide eager to consume everything in its path. "You cannot save her. Not after your failures, your lies, your betrayals. She belongs to us now." Each word dripped with malice, scraping against the walls of my mind. I staggered under their weight, my world tilting threateningly as the scene before me warped and twisted into grotesque, torment-laden visages. Then, as if responding to my panicked thoughts, the alien being, shimmering with foreboding light, zeroed in on my torment. "The truth revealed will set you free, Seeker," it urged. "But the deeper you go, the more you'll lose. The shadows demand a sacrifice, a trading of despair for salvation." The reality hit me like a blow. Sacrifice? What would they take from me in exchange? Would it be a piece of my memory, the locked memories of those I had abandoned, those I vowed to protect? Or was it something worse? "Find me," my sister's voice thrummed through the chaos. "Remember us," and the more I deepened into thought, the more liberated the exquisite pain became, a pulsing awareness of what lay at stake, shrouded in the dark. Who would I choose to sacrifice? But then came the horrific truth, a shattering epiphany. I was already damned. It surged violently through my veins, igniting the truth I had tried to submerge. I opened my eyes, and the illusions broke, exposing the piteous souls each one a part of me carved away. My failures, my choices had intertwined my fate inexorably with that of the shadows. "No!" I shouted, wrestling against the darkness as it swarmed, its grip tightening around me like iron shackles. "You want to take me?" But the shadows laughed, a chorus that turned my insides to ice. "We are you, Seeker. Embrace the darkness. Let it enfold you. Let them witness as you fall." Within that chaos, her face flickered like a candle threatened by the wind, shimmering among the shadows. "Save me. You said you would save us." But the horror of what lay before me bloomed, spilling open the doorway of my soul. I was bound, not just to her, but to a cycle of abandonment and regret. The truth crashed upon me again and again, like waves on a stormy shore. "Together, we can be free," I implored, gathering remnants of resolve that had long since begun to wane. I was a prisoner of my own choices, but I could still wrest my fate from their grasp. But just as hope ignited within me, a voice like thunder cut through the chaotic din, "The choice is yours, indeed. But it will not be what you expect." And then I realized. Something shifted. What if my sacrifice was not of life, not of regret, but of acceptance? What if the very act of facing my darkest truths freed me? The shadows pressed in close, but I steeled my resolve. "No!" I screamed, pushing against their clutches. "You will not take her. I will not allow it." But as I wrestled against the tide, the cavern trembled as though sensing my struggle. Pillars cracked, the reality around me vibrating violently. The alien being suspended in the light grew agitated, its voice vibrating like a cord under immense pressure. "If you wish to save her, you will lose everything you have ever held dear." "Everything?" I whispered incredulously as the shadows seemed to ripple in response, their shapes contorting and melding into faces of those I had loved and lost. "You mean me? I am your vessel." And then, with a rush of unbearable clarity, I understood the price of hope. I understand. To save her, I must face myself wholly, my fears, my losses. I will not hide. The shadows recoiled momentarily, as if caught off guard by my sudden clarity. "The burdens you abandoned will not surface effortlessly," the alien being warned. "Let them come," I cried defiantly, the truth igniting a fire in my heart. As if sensing my fervor, the cavern erupted into maddening chaos, spirits swirling faster, a vortex of memories that twisted and warped. I was engulfed, and instead of retreating, I lunged forward into the heart of the storm, ready to reclaim what was mine. I saw it then, a single flickering ember of light that called out from the center of this tumult, revealing the horrid beauty where wordless shadows intersected with radiant laughter. And within that light, a tremendous weight shattered, revealing roots of despair spiraling out like veins entwined around my heart. "Join us!" every soul cried in unison, and I felt the rawness of their loss seep through me. I understood them, felt their ache intertwined with my very essence. "Save me!" My sister's voice cut through the noise, clear and steady. And I saw it all, the reflection of my soul as it fractured with each decision, each moment of regret. They gathered in the distorted apparition of my sister, no longer distorted but bearing my own anguish. "You've always been here, haven't you?" I murmured, realization crashing over me like a tidal wave. "Face the shadows with me." "Together," I shouted, melding my energy with the vibrations released from those lost, accepting the burdens, the shadows, the regrets carved into my heart. They swirled around me, enveloping me in their essence as forms molded, twisted, and turned into my sister's anguished face once more. "Do not let go," she gasped through the shadows, her voice the lifeline I so desperately wished to grasp. And just like that, I realized within the labyrinth of darkness, I had done the unthinkable, merging despair with struggles, lending solace to the shadows aching for release. I surged forth, trapped between realms of sorrow and light, grasping ribs of illuminating truth decorating the void where shadows lingered. The structure roared, thrumming with a percussive rhythm that felt alarmingly similar to the pulse of life itself. "You cannot leave. You are too late." The shadows hissed, howling in anger as I broke through their grasp, my heart illuminating like a beacon, defying their very essence. But my sister did not wear a twisted mask of anguish anymore. She formed an ethereal shape bathed in warmth and light as she emerged from the darkness swirling around us. For every breath I took drew upon the shadows, unraveling their grasp. Together, I beckoned as she reached out, fingers intertwined struggling against the bitter echoes that mocked our reunion. "Yes! Break free!" she shouted, laughter bursting like morning light, and in that moment of clarity, I saw it, a fracture in the fabric of reality opening wide, as if both realms cried for cohesion. As I erupted forth into that splintered beam of light, the shadows released their terrible grip, consumed with fury, as the radiant truth finally surged through me, redeeming and claiming everything I had lost in the battle beyond life, the curse broken, my sister alongside me, melding into a vision of hope. But before I could breathe relief, the shadows coalesced. The figure of the alien structure erupting back into the dark, a remnant echoed in a deep voice, "We will find you again, Seeker." The darkness never truly relinquishes its claim. As bright light enveloped me, the haunting truth settled uneasily into the cobwebs of my mind, the reality that even when cast into the light, shadows still lingered, forever watching, waiting for their opportunity to reclaim their lost prey. And in that flickering moment of realization, before the warmth pulled me entirely into a new realm of life, the last whisper echoed chillingly in my ears, "Remember us."